Okay, welcome to the Bromley study group for A Course in Miracles, and today is the 9th of April 2022. And today we're going to be studying the ego's use of guilt, which in the full version of the Course in Miracles book is page 83, and chapter 5, Healing and Wholeness. And we're going to start from paragraph 2, line 7, which is almost at the bottom of page 83.
Wait a minute, don't do it.
Yeah?
Oh, thank you.
It's almost the last
yeah.
line, yeah? Where it says anything. But before we go there, I want to tell you a story. Those who remember Max Bygraves,
Yeah.
who are old as me. Anyway, so when my son probably was about 6 or 7 or something, and I always used to tell him not to play football in the house, and the only thing that I had of any value was a beautiful Franklin Mint ballerina, and it was worth quite a bit of money then, in comparison to everything else I owned, and I loved it. The thing is, I loved it. Now, my son was playing football in the front room and smashed the figurine and sent himself to bed before I could get there. Now, the story that my ego has always told about this is that I must have been such a monster that he feared my wrath so much that it was safer to just send himself to bed and escape, hopefully, escape the punishment, or, too much of the punishment. And that's a story that my ego told. So I'm going to come back to this at the end, because it's relevant to this part. And in your life, you'll always have these events that actually mirror the teachings of the Course. So I'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, so let me just read. So, anything that engenders fear, false evidence that appears real, is divisive because it obeys the laws of division. Okay, so let's just read that again. Anything that engenders fear, and remember, fear is of the ego that believes you are separate. Okay, so anything that engenders fear is divisive, because that's what the ego wants, and obeys the ego's laws, the laws of division. If the ego is the symbol of the separation, it is also the symbol of guilt. Guilt is more than merely not of God, it's a symbol of the attack on God. Okay? And that's why I say to you, when you read sin, read separation, and when you read guilt, read attack on God. Okay? Because it makes it vivid and real, because the ego uses sin and guilt in different ways, doesn't it? Okay? It talks about religious sin and, guilt because you've done something wrong. So we have to reclaim the language as we go along, okay? So, guilt is merely not of God, it is the symbol of the attack on God. This is a totally meaningless concept, except to the ego. But do not underestimate the power of the ego's belief in it, how it be and lives it, okay? This is the belief from which all guilt, attack on God, really stems. And when I read meaning and meaningless, I always, because it's really talking about the means, the way to. And so what I've learned as I've read through so many times is actually meaningless means it has no power to create in reality. So meaning is power to create. Meaningless is it has no power to create, in brackets, in reality. Okay? Because it's not of God. So the ego is the part of the mind that believes in division. Okay? It bees it and it lives it. How could part of God detach itself without believing it is attacking him? Nothing that is one can attack itself, can it? Okay, so if it's being attacked, it would have to believe there is now at least two parts of it. Like we do, we believe, we have a split mind. We spoke before of the authority problem as based on the concept of usurping God's power. Now, the ego wants you to believe that you created yourself, your mum and dad gave birth to you, and as you've gone along, you've created a personality, etc., etc. And that steals the power of creation from God, because God created you. And if I'm talking on the mainstream, what I usually say to people, okay, we can put an egg and sperm together, we can make a baby, but you didn't create the spark of life that actually you need within the egg and the sperm to create life. Only God creates, man can make. And the course differentiates between the two. And if you think about it, to create, it's creating something new. When you make something from things that already exist. Which is why we can't really create anything, because you'd have to use ingredients that already existed, number one. And to make serves a lack or a need. And obviously, if there is no lack or need in God. Okay, so again, the ego is all about usurping the power of God. The ego believes that this is what you did because it believes that it is you. If you identify with the ego, you must perceive yourself as guilty, as having attacked God by separating yourself. Because look, I'm here, God's not in my world, I'm a body now, whereas God's just mind, etc., etc. So it seems that I must have done, if I believe this is real life, I must have done what I'm accusing myself of doing, attacking God, saying, I don't want your world, I don't want everything, I don't want what you've given me, I want this. Okay? Whenever you respond to your ego, you will experience guilt, the separation, the attack that you have actually sinned and attacked God, and you will, therefore, fear punishment, have false evidence about punishment is deserved. Okay? See how it changed, the text changes when you change the meaning of the words, when you use the words in a different way. The ego is quite literally a fearful thought, a thought that is full of lies, false evidence. However ridiculous the idea of attacking God may be to the sane mind, never forget that the ego is not sane, it's mad. Mad reversed is damned, damnation, etc. It represents a delusional system and speaks for it. Listening to the ego's voice means, or has the power to create, that you believe that you will live and be, that it is possible to attack God, and that a part of him has been torn away from you. Fear, false evidence, of retaliation from without follows, because the severity of guilt is so acute that it must be projected away from you. So if I believe that I've done something so terribly wrong, and I fear that God, I have a lie that God is going to come and punish me really bad. Remember my son, I'm the God of his world, okay? He's killed my statue and I'm going to come and get him, so he runs away before, I can get him, if you like. And so what we do is we project it out. So the ego, if you think about the Lucifer self, the self that wanted to be completely different, separate, away from God, projected itself into a body that doesn't look like its original self, it looks like something completely different, and now the ego, we could call that the pseudo-self, has now, is now getting the blame, if you like, because it's that's separate, doesn't know what happened, so can't ever go, well, it weren't me, Gov, it was you, and is now stuck believing that it is separate and it is the one that did this. Does that make sense? Yeah? Because this is the course in a nutshell, just this little bit, if you like. Whatever you accept into your mind has reality for you. If you don't believe in aliens, they don't exist for you. And anything you saw, you go, oh no, that's just a plane or a light or whatever. Okay? So you have to believe, you have to accept it, that information, that story, in order to be able to experience it. That's really important. Because if all those people who don't believe in God can never ever experience the love, the blessings, everything that God gives. And that's one of those big blocks to it, isn't it? Not that God doesn't exist, God will always exist, but now that person literally won't ever see it, hear it, or experience it. If you enthrone the ego in your mind, because again, we believe in our pseudo-self and the ego, you're allowing it to enter, makes it your reality. So if you believe you're a physical body who can get sick and die, that will become your reality. Not because it's true, but because you have accepted it as a false idol or a block to the truth. This is because the mind is capable of creating reality or making illusions. I said before that you must learn to think with God. To think with Him is to think like Him. This engenders joy, not guilt, an attack on God, because it is natural. Guilt, the attack on God, is a sure sign that your thinking is unnatural. Because actually you can't even do that. You can't have attacked what you are. One cannot attack itself. You can't separate because God is infinity and eternity, so you can't be at another place at another time. And so what you're accusing and condemning yourself of doing, not only did you not do, so you're innocent, but you couldn't have done it anyway. Couldn't have happened. It's just impossible. Unnatural thinking will always be attended with guilt, the attack on God, because it is the belief in sin. Now, the Course defines sin really early on as lack of love. So it's an unloving thought. That's all it is, an unloving thought. And if we go back, things that you give attention to and you accept become real for you. But if you didn't give it another thought, like the Course says it was a mad idea at which you should have laughed, if you'd have laughed at it and let it go, none of this would have happened. Be possible. The ego does not perceive sin as a lack of love, but as a positive act of a sort. This is why you have to reclaim the language. Because when you say sin, that's an ego word with an ego interpretation. You've done something wrong. You're guilty. So it's when you use the word sin without thinking about it in the way that we might normally do before we were using the Course, then you are talking about you have done something bad and you have offended God and now you need punishment. And you're also saying that you have separated yourself from God and that is an attack on Him. He's offended by that. But it's false evidence that might appear real, but it's impossible. Which is your saving, isn't it? Your salvation. Because if you can't have done it, you don't have to worry about it. This is necessary to the ego's survival because as soon as you regard sin as lack of love, as lack, you will automatically attempt to remedy the situation. That's what we do. If we're hungry, we feed ourselves. If I haven't got money, I'll go and try and find money somehow, somewhere. So soon as the ego experiences lack, it sends you on that seek but do not find journey. And if you have accepted once that you are a sinner in any way, shape or form, that you are separate, your body, you experience an illness or whatever, that program then continues, like on your computer. If you open Word, it will stay open forever until there's another action.
Why doesn't it want you to find it, what you're seeing?
Because then you will see that all of this is an illusion and go back to God, and the whole thing is set up to keep you away from God because you want this world. On some level, this is what you want. Or at least you want it and now don't realise you're trapped in your own nightmare as such. Does that make sense? This is necessary to the ego's survival because as soon as you regard sin as a lack, you will automatically attempt to remedy the situation and you will succeed. The ego regards this as doom, but you must learn to regard it as freedom. And when you see learn, it means accept a change in belief or thought. So you have to now think about it as actually this is my freedom, a way to be free. The guiltless mind, the mind that hasn't attacked God, believes it hasn't done anything, can't suffer. If my son thought he had, he hadn't smashed the statue on purpose, or it doesn't matter, it could be mended or whatever, he wouldn't have suffered in the same way as when he believed that he'd, really done something terrible and I was going to come and get him, which I probably would have at that point. Giving it up. Being sane, the mind heals the body because it has been healed. The sane mind cannot conceive of illness. It can't even think about it. Can't see it. We was talking about vision is the knowing. So it doesn't even see it. It doesn't accept it on any level. Because it cannot conceive of attacking anyone or anything. Which is really another way of saying you're back in your Christ mind, knowing that you are one with everything, and therefore you can't attack. You can't separate. Any of it can't be true. I said before that illness is a form of magic. Now, magic again, when I see that, I read images that I see. The I, the ego, the images that I see here. Because when I read that, it puts me in a place of knowing these are just images. It's not real. It might be better to say that it's a form of magical solution. It might be better to say that it is a form of magical solution. I can solve it here with different images that I see. Not a change of truth, just I change the image. The ego believes that by punishing itself, it will mitigate the punishment of God. Which is exactly, I realised this morning, what my son did. By punishing himself, it would mitigate the punishment that he was going to get from me. And that made me laugh when I read that. I thought, oh my God, that's exactly what he was doing. Yet even in this it is arrogant. It attributes to God a punishing intent. And then, so first of all, it says, projects onto God that God will punish you. God's never shown that. God couldn't do that. God's not a person with an ego and blames and judges and all of that. But the ego's telling you, it's creating God in its own form. Really important. It's creating God in its own form. Okay? So it attributes, it gives to God, not because it's true, but this is what it wants, a punishing intent, and then takes this intent as its own prerogative. It tries to usurp all the functions of God as it perceives them, because it recognises that only total allegiance can be trusted. if it's not a whole story that is a self-fulfilling prophecy, if there's any crack of light, any doubt, any truth that comes in, the whole thing falls apart. It's like Jenga, if you like. You pull one thing out, the whole thing falls apart. So it's invested in keeping all of this going in every way, shape or form. So everything you see, you hear, everything around you will reinforce the beliefs of the ego. So you cannot escape. But it's a prison of your own making based on lies, false evidence. From the original root that you could have done something that's not even possible to do. So when you go back and you look at it and just go, well, it's impossible, everything else falls apart, doesn't it? Because it's all based on that one original lie, or error, if you like. So the ego cannot oppose the laws of God any more than you can, but it can interpret them according to what it wants, just as you can. You get what you see, you get what you want, you get what you expect. This is why the question, and again, now when I read question, I see quest. You know, it's like a quest, a journey. Action, remember, T-I-O-N, or ation is always action. So this moving into action. What do you want must be answered. You are answering it every minute of every second, and each moment of decision is a judgment, an evaluation, that is anything but ineffectual, which is another way of saying every thought creates. Every thought is a cause that will have an effect. So you really need to be deciding who you are, where you are, and what this world is. Because every single minute of every day, you're basing who you are, and what you experience on that original decision as such. Its effects will follow automatically until the decision is changed. So if, for example, every morning, every evening, you're reasserting, through prayer, through connection with the course, with the daily lessons, you kind of resetting all of the time, reopening, that I'm Christ, I'm one with God, this is heaven, everything is good. Because with God, everything is good. So even if I've fallen in the day or whatever, as soon as I reassert that will stay open, if you like, that file will stay open until I do something to close it. So this is why the course has a lesson every single day, and I, anyway, continuously do it, not because I'm continuously doing the same course, but it's my reassertion every morning, my reassertion every hour, some of them lessons that you have to do it regularly, and my reassertion at night that I am, resetting. And so the more you do that through the day, the more it will become all of the time, eternity, infinity. If I'm always the Son of God, in that subtext, always God is created as my Father. If I reassert I am the Son of God as a thought, then I am a thought in the mind of God. Because remember, in the terms it says mind with the capital M, God's mind, is the initiating and activating agent of spirit, supplying its creative source. And that tells you clearly, God, you have to have the mind to be able to be a thought. It's the mind that produces and supplies the thought with attention that keeps it alive. That's why God will never forget you. Because if God forgot you, you'd cease to exist as such. But can't really, because it's eternal, theoretically. Does this all make sense? Stop me if it doesn't. Okay. So you're getting what you want, so you better be careful what you're asking for. Remember though, that the alternatives themselves are unalterable. The Holy Spirit, like the ego, is a decision. Together they constitute all the alternatives the mind can accept and obey. So basically 2 choices. The Holy Spirit and the ego are the only choices open to you. God created one, and so you cannot eradicate it. Nothing the ego does will ever remove the Holy Spirit from your mind. It's always another choice. You made the other one, and so you can eradicate that one. Because only what God makes is eternal. What we make is temporary and open to change. Only what God creates is irreversible and unchangeable. What you made can always be changed, because when you do not think like God, you are not really thinking at all. You're having an illusion, if you like. Delusional ideas are not real thoughts. Although you can believe in them, you can be and live by them, you'll just be dreaming or having an illusion. But you are wrong. The function of thought. Now, function is the meaning and the purpose given to something at the point of creation. So the function of a cup is to hold hot water, that's why it has a handle. The function of a glass is to hold cold liquid as such. So although they look very similar and you can use them in the same way, the function, the meaning and the purpose at their point of creation is very specific as such, yeah? So the function of thought, what God was doing, if you like, and meant for it to be and giving it its purpose, comes from God and is in God. As part of his thought, you cannot think apart from him. So you cannot be anywhere else, have your own mind, make your own decisions, have any thought that is separate from God, that is real, and will have real consequences. And that's why, so the ego is trying to tell you, you have an individual mind that is in your head, that nobody else can read. You can have private thoughts that nobody else will ever hear or know. But it's not true. There's one mind. And if you open out to that, then you share your mind of God, you share your thoughts with everyone else. We might call it the collective consciousness in psychology as such. And then the ego will go, oh God, if they knew what I just had a terrible thought about you. Oh God, if everyone heard that, if everybody knew what I was really like. And then, so what you shut down even more. You want to carry on believing that, because we've all had bad thoughts about God and everybody else. Or, thoughts we wouldn't want to share with anyone else. So people know that. Oh my God, no. No, of course they can't, no one can read mine, all of this that we then carry on creating, not because it's true, but because we're fearful of the consequences if that was true. But those thoughts those negative thoughts, if you like, or the thoughts of the ego are not real and cannot even be seen or heard by God, the Holy Spirit, the truth. Because if you think of the truth as light and God as light and all of that, that's a little spot of darkness. And as soon as it came into, if you like, the field of the light, it would disappear, wouldn't it? Which is why God would never even see any of this, can't even see this, can't even react to it, not even like he's not interested, but it's just impossible. So and that's why if you just let it all go, you send it to the light, it actually just disappears. It has no effects. What has no cause has no effects. Okay, so irrational thought is disordered thought. Distanced from order. Okay, so chaotic. God himself orders your thoughts because your thought was created by him. Guilt, attack on God. Guilt feelings are always a sign that you don't know this, that you're thinking with the ego. telling yourself lies. They also show that what you believe, what you're being and living, you can think apart from God, and you want to. Every disordered thought is attended by guilt, a separation on God, as its inception, and maintained by the attack on God in its continuance. So everything is self-reinforcing. The attack on God, guilt, is inescapable by those who believe, who be and live, that they order their own thoughts and must therefore obey their dictates. So the most powerful lesson I found in the course is that one where it says, you know nothing. Today I make no decisions for myself. Because if I'm not making decisions by myself, I've given my mind back to God. If I make a decision, I am in the ego. And the decision will be of the ego and of reality. And therefore I'm attacking God again. And it all just starts again. It's all just reinforced again. This makes them feel responsible for their errors without recognizing that by accepting this responsibility, they are reacting irresponsibly, actually without responsibility. If the sole responsibility of the miracle worker, and a miracle worker is someone who works with God's loving thoughts, is to accept the atonement, the correction for himself, and I assure you that it is, then the responsibility for what is atoned, corrected, cannot be yours. So let's just read that again. Guilt is inescapable by those who believe they order their own thoughts and must therefore obey their dictates. Because they believe they have a separated mind. They've offended God and don't want nothing to do with him. This makes them feel responsible for their errors. Well, if it's not God's mind, it's my mind, and therefore I'm the one making the mistake, okay? But without recognizing that by accepting that that is true, they're reacting irresponsibly. If the sole responsibility of the person who works with God's loving thoughts is to accept the correction for himself, so I'm accepting a correction from a higher source. If I accept the correction, then I'm acknowledging this higher source, if you like, whoever does the atonement, Christ, the Holy Spirit, whatever, okay? I'm giving it up. I'm forgiving it. And therefore I'm making this other reality, Christ, Holy Spirit, God, I make all those real in the subtext. Does that make... And if I make this real, by consequence, I make this unreal. So by knowing I can't correct my own errors, but I know a man who can, there's a huge subtext that goes on about that. And if I'm brave enough, and I will allow myself to recognise Christ, Holy Spirit, God, then I'm also asserting that I'm not frightened any more of the punishment. Therefore, I must have accepted that I didn't do anything wrong. So there's a huge subtext underneath all of these things. Like when you say, I am the Son of God. The huge subtext underneath that statement, as opposed to I am Theresa or I am ego, is massive. It is the power of one thought creates either heaven or hell, and everything within that. Is this making sense? So to accept the atonement is, is so much more powerful than just going, oh, correct that for me. This is the key. This is the key. The dilemma cannot be resolved except by accepting the solution of undoing. You would be responsible for the effects of all your wrong thinking if it could not be undone. The purpose of the atonement, the correction, is to save the past in purified form only. I.e., what is good, all the good thoughts I've had, all the loving thoughts I've had, which are light, if you like, when they go up to the light, they're accepted and held because they can survive in the light. All my negative thoughts and the ego thoughts go up and they get obliterated by the light because they're darkness. That's the way I like to see it and think about it. If you accept the remedy for disordered thought, a remedy whose efficacy is beyond doubt, how can its symptoms remain? The continuing decision to remain separated is the only possible reason for continuing guilt feelings, to continue to believe that you have attacked God. We have said this before, but did not emphasize the destructive results of the decision. Any decision of the mind will affect both behavior, what you be and you have, and experience, what you want, you expect. This is not delusional. Your mind does make your future, and it will turn back to full creation at any minute if it accepts the correction, the atonement first. Because it's like that reset button, stating who you are. It will also return to full creation the instant it has done so. Having given up its disordered thought, the proper ordering of thought becomes quite apparent because it is of God. You've returned to the mind of God. You're back in communion, communication, communion in action, oneness in action. So I'm now talking, not reading. To give attention is to sustain life. To believe, to be and live, is an acceptance of a perceived truth which gives it life, to create in your life, if you like. You have to give it that power by your witness. A witness makes something real. If I said there's a gangasha in the corner and you can't see it, because it's not real to you, then there is doubt whether it's true. But if you go, oh yeah, I can see that gangasha, I go, see? And now we both believe, and because it's shared, what is shared becomes real, becomes stronger, everything is strengthened by sharing. Now it's real for both of us, and continues to be real until we choose to change that thought. And so forgiving is to give up, to not witness to something anymore. Therefore, it's to say, I'm not giving this life anymore as such. Okay, any questions?
Can I just ask you a question? What does it actually mean, Theresa, by atonement then? What's it?
Yeah.
Is that just saying? Is that saying that we realise that the ego's thoughts are wrong and our thoughts are not wrong in that way, but that there's something more? So what's atonement?
So this is why, as I've gone through, I've been taught, because when you've read in that book, atonement is correction. It clearly says it. Like right at the beginning, it says sin is lack of love. But the first 7 or 8 times I read it at least, I was still reading sin as, and guilt as done something wrong that, needs to be corrected and all of this, right? So it clearly tells you atonement is correction. The correction, the atonement principle is like the correction mechanism. So now when I read atonement, because atonement is kind of nebulous to me, I read the correction. And then it becomes really real for me. Because correction is of, again, there's a whole subtext, correction is of an error. An error has no intent behind it, not like a sin has an intent. So an error can be corrected and learned from, change accepted, and moved on. Because when you've accepted the lesson, when you have learned, you've accepted the information, that changes you, and then you let it go, don't you? Like walking, learning to walk. You've accepted the lesson, you've accepted all the information that changed you from crawling to walking, and then you let it go, and now it's automatic as such. So the atonement, when you give it up, you're saying, I'm not holding on to this, it's not a sin, I didn't mean to do it, I give it up for correction, atonement. And the atonement is when you've received, because you can have something corrected, but if you don't accept it and receive it, witness to it, it doesn't become real. Which is why God, the Holy Spirit, is talking to you all the time. Unless you listen and receive, appreciate and act on it, you haven't received anything.
So it's like then you're giving up the lies and the fear. And yeah.
Because fear is lie. False evidence that appears real, but basically it's the lies of the ego. And you were mistaken to think that was truth and real. Any other questions? Any other thoughts?
I was just going to ask about...
oh, 1 second. Just remind me to come back to my son's story. Go.
Yeah, I was going to ask about, like, you say we fear about that we're going to be punished by God. But what exactly, I've never really thought, what exactly do you think he's going to do to us? Because, like, when, I don't know, it wasn't my lowest, I remember thinking, well, nothing's worse than this.
Yeah.
So, God can't make me feel worse than this anyway. So, I can't really... This is the worst that can get, so why not choose another way?
But that's the point at which you start coming up, because now you don't have to fear God. If you can make life the worst it can be yourself, and so he can't touch you now.
No,
so now it's okay. Actually, perhaps I can start to go that way. And I think that's why, the same thing with, I was really suicidal. That was the point at which I went, oh God.
You kind of let go, don't you?
Yes, surrender.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question though? There's something else I wanted to say about that. So the fear of God, okay. Now, if you believe the ego's story of God, that it's so powerful, it's created everything, if you've read the Bible, the wrath of God is going to rain down and kill you and all of this. If you believe that on some level, and remember if you believe you live on this level, you've got ancestral programming, church has been powerful for most of our existence, the wrath of God, you're going to go to hell, you're born a sinner already. So even if you don't ever consciously think about it, it's in there. And it's reinforced, all of us who had to have religious studies when we were young or had to go to church with our parents, whatever. You might have thought you moved away from the church, but that's recorded in and the files are open unless you ever went and changed them. Okay. So now there's that's sitting there. And so you always know, like my son, I guess, was always on edge that if he ever did anything wrong, I was going to come for him. Okay, so just that always being on edge, fight or flight, always on, makes you hyper vigilant. Okay, so that's like that is what's happening to most of us without even realizing it. So how are you ever? And I think this is why people won't accept the word God. Lots of people don't even want to use God, higher self, or whatever. Okay, so but if you won't accept that God is a loving being, you're never going to, all the time you think he is capable of punishment, you're not going to go back there, just in case, okay? Because any punishment, we all want to avoid punishment, don't we? So we do everything that we can, or the ego does everything it can to keep you away from God. So this is why, often we go all around the houses, Buddhism, law of attraction, any way that it can get you to just sort of start to undo. Because now I remember, I never had a belief in God or anything, and I was angry at God for, all the crap that was going on in my life, even though I didn't believe in him, I thought. It was easy to blame him for everything that was going wrong in my life. The thing that started me, first of all, was law of attraction. Believing in the universe. Well, what's believing in the universe? Who created the universe? I didn't ask that question. Who created the universe and what the universe is? You know, the ego doesn't want you to ask those questions. Or just believe in the universe. You know, we don't know what it is, but it's this kind of thing that sometimes will help you, because law of attraction doesn't work all of the time, does it? We all know that. And all of that kind of stuff. So it's like no better than luck and chance, really. So it kind of gives you a little bit, because it knows really it's not really got any power behind it. Did that answer your question?
I think so, yeah. Is that why, like, science is like, we don't know, science can't prove anything really, can it? But then it's like, oh, well, I'll give you a little, like, you know, I'll give you Einstein or and then I'll give you quantum physics, just to keep you sort of on the leash kind of thing, on the hook.
Because you're still believing that you're trying to make sense of this because it's real.
Yeah, sure.
And so it's like, you know, trying to make sense of your dream and believing the dream is real and interpreting the dream and, oh, the dream means this in my waking life and all of that. All you're doing is making the dream real. And it's just another part of that life, isn't it? We're still in illusion, still not looking to the right thing, to the escape. It's just making your prison better or understanding, you know, who's locking you in or why it's locking you in, why you can't escape and what the bars are made of, but you're still in prison.
Can I ask one more question?
That's cool, yeah.
You know, like, you get a lot of sort of really creative people that, I suppose, unhealed healers that kind of, they can channel the truth, but then they often sort of lead very tragic lives and die young. Is that like, why is that? Is that because they're sort of, they
believe in magic?
No, but like some of it's very profound in it, like
like what
like some song lyrics and I don't know. Some artists are very can be very profound sometimes, and
it depends, doesn't it, on what level you're talking about. So very profound, great artists, you know, who think they wrote those lyrics and they know this.
That's what I mean. I understand they probably channeled it somehow without realising it.
Yeah.
But then a lot of them kind of end up destroying themselves, like through addictions, and they die young through
because
suicide.
The thing that I asked you was channeled from.
Right.
Because, you know, like when I used to do trance channeling, I gave it a name, and you know, this great spirit guide is giving me information. Now I realise, no, it wasn't. I was just connecting to the God's mind, because I'm always connected. I get revelation every minute of every day. As I'm not thinking about what I'm saying, I've already given all my work, all my teaching up to God. In fact, I've given my whole life up to God. I was laughing this morning because I was sitting out in the garden and the sky was completely blue, and then you get that chemtrail stuff that comes and makes it all milky and ruins your day. And I was going, bloody Bill Gates and your chemtrails ruining my sunshine. And then I laughed because I thought, no, you know, if I am living in heaven on earth, then I've just made Bill Gates a false idol who can actually usurp the power of God and change the weather. That's how insidious it is. Does that make sense?
Sort of, but I've kind of been like people like Michelangelo and Van Gogh.
Yeah.
Or they obviously did produce something that was like a channeled, if you like, through. It's
Are
the
they
truth.
rich? But you see, you're talking about it on this physical level as if they were real people with separated minds who were able to get information from another separated mind.
Right.
Because it wasn't their mind, was it? They got that information.
Okay, so were they tuned into, say they tuned into the God FM or whatever it is?
Right, hang on, because you're talking about two different levels of reality without realising it. So first of all, you're saying Leonardo existed and that he got all of this, he was a person on this earth with a mind like all of us, separated, but he got special knowledge from somewhere else. Right, see that first.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he tuned in. He tuned into the part of him that was God.
But you're talking about him as a real physical person, okay, who didn't have that information at first, and was able to get it from somewhere.
Yeah.
Right, just that, first of all. Right. Because this is really important, this is fundamental. Okay, because this is, in the course it says you talk about things on different levels without realising it. Okay, so that's one part of the story. So that's the physical story. Where he gets it from, now, again, it depends on what he believes and what you believe. If we say that he's real, just for now, and he lived on the physical level. So you can meditate and get really good information, and you might never ask the question where it's coming from and what it's coming from. And you might just think, oh, I had a brainwave. I had a light bulb moment. So again, the ego claims that as if you have done that you are a genius. Okay, so that's a good strategy because it keeps you separated still. The knowledge is within you. There's nothing out there that's giving you this information. Okay, so again, that depends, right? But the story that the Holy Spirit would tell is completely different. So on this level of the course, let's say, he opened his mind to the one mind, which is always, you're really open to the one mind, and received direct revelation from the Holy Spirit, who is the voice for God. Now, when I'm talking about the subtext, you see, if you believed the first story, you have made yourself an ego, and you are now in hell. But if you interpret that story as the second, and know that this is your illusion, you created Leonardo, and that you are telling this story, and that you can either give up the whole, oh God, there I am dreaming again, laugh, let me go back to just pure being and connect my mind back to God, and therefore it would have no effect here. And you would know that you had that information, you got that information, and therefore you would be in heaven. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I suppose if you then interpret it as I did it, and then
I is the ego.
Yeah, and then you stop, and then you kind of close yourself to God again.
Exactly.
Then you're in hell, and then you self-destruct, I suppose.
Yeah, well, you're going to live in hell for as long as you believe and accept that you are in hell.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because heaven is a state of mind. It's a change of mind into keep reasserting truth. And then, so you're still in perception while you're here. You'll always be perceiving, which is subjective. But if you can make your beliefs as true to reality as possible, I am the Son of God, this is heaven on earth, and then it talks about a little gap, because if what you're perceiving is truth, the gap between that and knowledge is so tiny that God makes that final step, and then the universe disappears, I guess.
Why can't you say daughter of God?
Oh yeah, no, good. So he asked me a question in the week, about when she reads the course, she wants to change Son of God to Daughter of God. And the question I would ask you is, who's asking? And why?
It's most likely the ego because it feels better.
Exactly. So the ego wants to usurp it. It wants to take your course and make it its own. It wants to, like it's designing God. It wants to design. Now, we're not using Son of God. That's not who you are. If you make yourself daughter of God, you make yourself something different to Son of God.
Why not child of God then?
But it's all the same thing. Why are you
But if it's
changing
all
the
the
language?
same, then why not use child?
But why change the language?
Because most people can accept child more than son or daughter.
Most people or most egos?
Most
Why?
egos.
Why? Why though? Why does it want to change that language?
I suppose because it feels like, well, I'm a woman, and I'm not a man or a woman. I'm a person.
We could say person of God.
Yeah, but person is a person in a physical body. So you see, it's telling you've got to think about the subtext underneath these words.
Why son?
Because
we're not men, are we? And
on some level it's irrelevant, but it's about the relationship, father and son.
Oh.
So, you know, it's difficult.
Why not mother and
I know,
daughter?
that's where you were going, and it's difficult.
You know what I was going to say.
Yeah, exactly. But it's difficult to give you a reason, because on one level it's irrelevant, the words that you use, because it's about the relationship. Okay, so on one level you could say it doesn't matter whether it's mother and daughter or son and father, but what matters is the intention behind changing what has been given to you by Christ. Who do you think wrote this book? Who do you think is choosing the language?
God, isn't it? Because I've
Well,
been thinking
Jesus.
What do you believe this is? Who do you believe are these thoughts and these words?
Jesus is.
Right. Well, so if you believe that Jesus, who is the Son of God, who cast himself as the Son of God, is giving you this, and you then say, no, I want to say son of daughter of God or something else, you are making yourself something different from Christ.
But it could have been Helen Schuckman's, what you said, what's it called, like, ego, maybe it was filtered through that, and she put...
If you want to be and live that, you will be an ego. Because you've just made Helen Schuckman an ego and the author. She clearly says she wasn't the author.
No, I mean, like, she interpreted... It was interpreted through her, wasn't it? So her psychology's got to be involved.
Okay.
A little bit.
Do you get the experience? My experience of the course is that it's a living, breathing conversation that changes every time I read it.
Yeah.
I think the words are appearing in front of me.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how they got there. But when it comes to son and daughter, I'd say that the male, for me, is outwards. It does something. In the physical realm, it's outward, it projects. So to be a son is to be somebody who can also project. A mother is creative and receives from the male. So to be a mother and a daughter is different. It's a receptive quality. It's a passive quality.
Good, yeah. Good point. Really good point, yeah.
Mm.
But
But still, we mustn't change it, because you said that.
Right,
I
okay.
was all day I thought, I hope she lets
But then if you're saying you mustn't change it, make it real, aren't you?
Because I'm a daughter.
Right, hold on. Because I've just changed all the words. No one picked that up. That's where I thought we were going. Okay, but I haven't changed the words.
Sure.
I use what the course actually says,
Yeah.
but and what I realised, or was given after all this time, is that, like, the word sin, for example, has a whole different meaning when I read it, and that subtext, than if I replace sin at a certain point in my learning with lack of love. Because the course is changing as I'm going through it. At the beginning, I wouldn't have been able to remember all of them, because I was struggling just to understand the course itself. So changing all the language for me would have been even more confusing. But at a certain point, when I've got the principles, then I see, like this today, this, what I was reading today, the ego believes that by punishing itself, it will mitigate the punishment of, no, not that bit, sorry, hang on.
I think because she was...
Anyway, there was, sorry, just one second. So there was something that I read that, as you can see, I'm underlining and making notes all the time, that I'd never underlined before, and it was so important. So for me, what I've come to understand is this isn't a book with words in it. Every time I open the book, because it's the right lesson at the right time. There's things in there I've never read before. This is my 16th time of reading it. You would think I would know, it by now. Other books that I've read over and over again, I can almost predict the text, do you know what I mean, if you're going to talk about it on this level. So for me, this is a living, breathing, what's the difference of this? Because it's Christ's thoughts, Christ's words. So it's Christ's mind. It's like him sitting there on a chair talking to me. If I think it's a book where the text is already written and the course says, this is a course for you, it's written for you, so yours will probably be different to mine unless we come to a communion scenario like this where we share our mind and our knowledge. But there's no proof that yours says exactly the same as mine, unless we engage in this shared dream, if you like, experience.
Have you
Does it
seen?
make sense?
Sometimes I've tried, because I'm a little, I work through it, but I also in the evenings I'm kind of, right, what do I want? So, and I try and go back and find that, and I think,
can't
I
find
know it's here.
Yes.
It's here. I can visualise it there, and I'm thinking, but it was, and I can't find it, but it was meaning for me. In that moment.
Exactly. I often have that. I mean, like just then, you know, I knew it was on that page there. I just couldn't find it. So, and again, sometimes I think it's because that's been done. You don't need to go back to it.
Yeah.
So it's a living, breathing interact. Because there is only thought. Okay, this might be thought in form on this level, but it's still just thoughts.
But each one of us, as I point to us, we are not the thinkers of the thought.
No, no.
We're not the what?
We are not the thinkers of the thought.
There is only God's mind. God is the only thinker, creator. But we get to experience that. So in the terms, again, mind, capital M, God's mind, is the initiating and activating agent of spirit, which is what you truly are, supplying its creative energy. So it's like the electricity in the kettle. Without the electricity, the kettle isn't alive as such.
Mm.
So if the kettle cuts itself off from the electricity and just pretends it's an ornament, oh look at me, I'm an ornament. You know, it is what it believes it is, but it isn't alive because it's not sharing, if you think of the electricity as the mind of its creator, who it needs to supply its energy,
Yeah.
its life force.
Can I say, you know that, what was her name?
Helen
Helen,
Schuckman.
anyway, Helen. She only done it because it was written, the course was written in psychology because she was
She's
psychologist.
Yeah.
But if she wasn't, it would have been written a different way, wouldn't it? So then, would it apply to people like us, or like me?
Well, so again, what level are you talking on?
I'm talking about psychology.
No, I mean, so on the level of, you know, you're making Helen exist, and that she's a psychotherapist,
Yeah,
and that it had
that's
to be
a thing.
had to be done in that way.
Yeah.
It's a book, and you know. Blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
but that's what I've read in other books when they've done an easy way of looking at things.
Yeah, but remember, this body, like Helen's body, is a telephone receiver, a giver and receiver of messages. That's what it says in the book. Okay, so on one level, it doesn't matter who it came from. It's coming from me. All these words are just coming through me. They're not my words. I know nothing. You know, you asked me to remember what I just said. Got no chance whatsoever because I'm not saying it as such.
Have I heard the same words that you heard?
Exactly.
Most likely not.
So on one level, Helen is just a dream character in your dream because you want to remember, put back together again, this knowledge that you had before and you've blocked. So you are Helen.
But Helen blocked a lot as well, didn't she? From what I've read, she
On
wrote
this
it.
level?
She wrote it, but she couldn't accept. She
didn't
couldn't
want- yeah.
accept. She
No.
couldn't live it.
No.
No, so-
And, you know, on this level, she died of cancer, which is one of the, you know, sickness in the body, sickness in the mind, means she hadn't accepted
But
it on any
even though
level,
she
even though she
done
was
it,
the vessel.
I did look on that route. She's a wonderful, well, woman or whatever for doing it to help
Oh, yeah, of
all
course.
these millions of people.
Yeah.
Because if I've never found this, I've never dropped myself again.
Yes, you would. Because
Well,
you...
I've tried all other things.
No, I know. What I'm trying to move you from is this physical level as Eileen. Okay. Remember, if this is your dream, and that's what the Course says as well, you've always got this knowledge, you just block it.
Yeah, well,
So you would have, just because you were seeking, you would have found it somewhere. You would have...
seeked all these years, and I've just about found this, and I thought this is the only thing. All the other spiritual things are okay.
Because
But then I put my soul into this.
the things appear on the road when you are ready. It's no good having the
It's a bit
turning
light.
here that you need when you're 4 miles down the road. You need the turning when you're ready to turn.
Yeah. I always used to say I'll sort that God thing out later.
There you go. And that's exactly
Like
what you've
years
done.
and years ago. Like.
Yeah, but listen, that's exactly what you've created.
Yeah.
So you instructed.
I wish I'd realised it then.
But you weren't ready. You weren't ready.
No. Well, I wasn't. The ego was saying carry on this way.
Because remember, who is the one that was saying, I'll sort it out later? You see, it's about owning every decision and every choice. If you were ready, you would have done it then. You weren't ready, so you got what you wanted and done it when you were ready.
Yeah, but with hindsight, I wished I'd have been ready so earlier.
Why? There is no time.
Well, because then I'd have had a lot of different outcomes would have been better.
You don't know that for sure.
Well, I'm sure
You would have
because I'd
created
have been
what-
in control of my mind more.
Okay.
Or, you
And
know,
that's making this into a form of magic that
Yeah.
you're only doing this to
yeah.
make your
Dream happier.
dream happier, and this is saying drop
Escape from the dream.
escape from the dream. So if you use this as an attempt to make your dream happier, you might as well be using law of attraction again.
Yeah, no, I think it is unravelling it, and I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
That said,
Because I
I haven't
wouldn't be able to live
escaped.
with
There's
that,
no,
'cause I know it's not true.
that God makes a final step, and
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And
waiting for that
I've
final
been
step.
living with this way of thinking, and yet deep pains in the body, emotional pain, still comes up, and I witness it, and I think, well, I'm still. But then I think, at some level, do I want that to know I'm alive? I don't know.
Yes, the answer is always yes, because
Yes.
you're still alive. You're still here.
I'm still here.
If you're still here, the answer
Yes.
is you still want this. On some level. So what I do now is I go, okay, why do I want this? And then my next lesson comes up and the next undoing is done.
That's what. Yes, that's how it feels for me. So I try to see the pain, however painful it feels, as part of a process.
And it's the process of giving up, you know, that fundamental belief, because even though it doesn't seem like that, on some level you must still believe that you want the separation or that you're frightened of the punishment. On some level, if you're still here, no matter how, you know, fantastically enlightened you are, if you're still here, there's still that going on somewhere.
I look at it as kind of like a metaphysical OCD, if it makes sense.
Yes.
That to get over OCD, because I had OCD, you have to face the thing. You do the rituals because you're scared of something.
Yeah,
But
you
then
have to face the
You
fear.
have to face the fear to do it. And I see like the ego is like it's your fate. It's like you have to face the fear before the fear. You're not afraid of it anymore. If you see what I mean.
Because when you face the fear, the false evidence,
Yeah.
and you see it's false evidence, then you can let it go. So someone who
you
has
have to face it, like, and
Well,
that's
yeah.
going to be painful.
Well, you have to bring the truth to the lie, as the Course would say. So if I'm turning the switch on and off because I think that will make my mother safe, which is what some of the things are like, okay, they're irrational. So if I don't turn that switch on and off 100 times before I leave the house, my mum will die. Okay, now that's completely insane and most people would recognise that. But when you're living it, the fact that you don't want to lose your mother will make you do it just in case. Just in case, because the only way that you can get over that is to, you know, teach them this is ridiculous and show them, okay, well, so you would like lessen the fear each time till they, so okay, what would happen if you only did it 99 times?
You'd have to do it.
Yeah, but it's like you only know you fly once you've jumped off the cliff. So birds will throw their chicks off the cliff or out of the tree, because then they have to fly, and once you can see you can fly, you're off. So it's the same way. So if you less and less and then you've got to one, you know, you can either go, okay then, well, you know, you've got to turn the switch off before you go to turn the light off. So they're still doing it, but they're doing it for a rational reason. Or you go, how would it be if you just left the light on? Because you believed 100 or your mum would die. Well, we did 99. She's still alive. 98, she's going to still, because it has nothing. How can it, you know, where's the connection and all of that?
As you say, when you're in it, it's real to you. Like,
Yeah.
you know it's irrational, but you still.
What
part
have
of
we
you
just
that's
read
still doing
today
it.
on the course? If you accept it, you will see it, because you believing is being and living. Believing is not a thought. It's an acceptance to live it as real.
It seems to me that life is almost like a self-confirming belief system.
It is.
It's just an echo chamber. Your beliefs,
Yeah.
they echo back.
That's what it just said, yeah. That's what, you know, go and read that again, word for word, really understanding on that deeper level what it's really saying. Because, you know, that's my 16th time, if you like, of reading it, and
What was
only
it
now.
What was it again, Libra?
Believing is to be and live it. So if you are being and living it, you must have already accepted it as a reality.
But it's not be live, it's be lie. It's a lie.
And it's a lie, yeah. I mean, for me, it makes it easier for being and living, but yes, lying as well.
Because
this is all a lie.
It's all a lie.
It's all a lie.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think because I do the mainstream psychology, so most people, you know, I can't go into this is all a lie and illusion and that, because they're not on that level. So for me, I think I'm just trained into being and living. Okay, cup of tea time?
Thank you.
And then we-